You're listening to Taste for Truth Weight Loss Encouragement. I'm your host, Barb Raveling. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. It's so great to have all of you here. And I am excited to have Tammy with me today. Welcome to the podcast, Tammy.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And Tammy is sitting in her car 6 miles from her home, trying to get good reception. So if you hear glitches every once in a while, that'll be because she doesn't have good reception. But we're going to give it a try anyway. So Tammy, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your history? Or actually tell us where you're from first.
Oh, I'm from Cheshire, Oregon, which is in the Pacific Northwest, a little tiny town outside of Eugene, Oregon, and lived here probably about 18 years. I'm a wife and a grandma and an equestrian, and I've been a Christian since I was 6 years old. And I have yo-yo dieted probably since I was 16 years old, and I just turned 60 2 weeks ago.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yes.
But what a rich heritage of being a Christian that long. That's nice.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, why don't you tell us a little bit about your weight loss history then, since this is a coaching call?
I have tried everything. I've tried any program you can name. I've probably been on it. I've tried pills. I've tried books. I've tried Christian weight loss programs. And when I came across your book, A Taste for Truth, about 2 years ago, I know I had stumbled onto gold, but I wasn't really doing it. I did the Bible study. I looked up the scriptures. I did what I thought was right. But I think in my mind, I had made up my mind that truth journaling was just another way of saying doing a devotion. In other words, reading a scripture or saying a prayer.
Oh, interesting.
And so every time that would come up, renew your mind, I would think, I just need to do a devotion. And then when I sat down to actually start to do it, especially in the truth journaling, I would find myself not really pouring out the guts of what I was feeling or thinking. I was pouring out statements that I knew I could combat with the truth. So I was kind of setting myself up to succeed, kind of like I was cheating, like I had a cheat sheet and I knew what the answers were because I've been in church all my life. So I didn't really apply your program. I just kind of went through the motions. And
what would be an example of what you did? Because I don't quite understand what you're saying about.
Okay, so say I had just blown it. Say I just eaten like a half a cake. I would say, okay, what am I gonna write down as a truth journal that I could combat that lie? Okay, well, I just ate a whole cake and it was delicious. I'm such a failure. I'm such a loser. Then I would say, truth, I did eat a whole cake. Was it delicious on a scale of 1 to 10, which you have people do, rate their food? No, it was probably a 6 or 7. Am I a failure? No, I'm not a failure. I failed this one time. Am I a loser? Absolutely not. I'm not a loser. But what I wouldn't pour out was, why did I go to that cake? Well, it's because I got in a fight with my husband, or my kids disappointed me, or we have stress in our business. That's why I went to the food and pacified those feelings for maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes at the most. So this past December, I cracked open your Freedom from Emotional Eating, and those 100 tools, those 100 little tricks in your book to renew your mind, truth journal, to do the outline, they've been absolutely life-changing. I have a little tab in my book so I can flip right to the table of contents and see what I need. And for the last 4 weeks, I have renewed my mind at least 3 times a day, truth journaled every day. I've lost probably 15 pounds in 4 weeks.
Wow.
And I have to tell you, I baked a chocolate cake with peanut butter frosting last night for my husband. I was not even tempted to take a bite. I didn't eat any of it. I didn't eat any of it today after lunch. I feel like I'm kind of walking 2 feet off the air because I finally understand that it's not about the food. It's about my relationship with Jesus and about going to him with the little tiny things that upset me all throughout the day, not just when I am thinking about food or what's in my kitchen. So I've found, I kind of feel like I've unlocked the key to your whole system.
I love that. So basically, I think you're talking about my newest book, Say Goodbye to Emotional Eating, right? The 100
Yes.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad that helped. And 3 times a day, that's the reason you weren't tempted to have that peanut butter cake. It wasn't because
Absolutely.
you got the book, you read the book. It was because you took the time to renew your mind specifically 3 times a day, and all that foundation is making you want to follow your boundaries.
You had said in your Taste for Truth book, I believe, in your Bible study, that in the beginning you had to keep all sweets out of your house because you knew you could not resist them, and that you finally reached a point where you could have, I don't know whether it was cinnamon rolls or brownies, you could have something sitting on the counter in your kitchen and you could walk by it and not be tempted to eat it. So I know I had victory today, but I know I have a lot of work to do. But I guess my number one question is, my boundaries are the keto diet, really low carb.
Okay, wait a minute. Before you tell me that, I want to go back to what you said about the being able to walk by it, just for everybody who's listening here, because I am at a point now, when I wrote Freedom from Emotional Eating, I could walk by it, but now in my life, I cannot. And it's because I have different trials in my life right now. So if you're listening and you're like, okay, I'm experiencing victory, and you just talked about experiencing victory, and you know you might not have it every day, just don't get worried if sometimes you can do that and sometimes you can't, because depending on what our trials are, if our tendency is to eat, sometimes we're going to want to eat. I wish I could have lived like that all my life. No, there's no way I could have. I was going to say, maybe I could have if I hadn't started writing. No, that's not true, because we always, different times in our life, we have different things happening where we're going to want to be drawn to food. So that doesn't mean I'm giving into that all the time, but I just want to clarify that right now in my life, I'm not the person who can walk by. I'm not the person who can have cinnamon rolls sitting on my counter. Okay, so now let's go on to your keto.
That is really helpful, because I will sometimes bargain or set myself up to fail, because I'll tell myself, oh, well, I resisted it yesterday, so I can have it in my house today. And you're absolutely right. It's what we're going through that dictates what we're tempted to or drawn to. So I've done the keto diet on and off for about 3 years, and it really, really works for me, because I get all sugar out of my system and I don't eat any sugar whatsoever. I don't have pasta or potatoes or bread. I have keto bread. And so my question to you is, I've read what you say about boundaries. Do you start with boundaries that are just a diet and then you switch to lifelong boundaries? Or do you just go ahead and set lifelong boundaries and know that even after you reach your weight loss goal, you're still going to have the same boundaries? So I, deep in my heart, know that I'm supposed to stay on the keto diet and not have sugar. But there's a little tiny part of me that I have not worked out all those lies yet. I've not pushed them all out of my head with the truth. Can I really live the rest of my life without cinnamon rolls or chocolate cake or peach cobbler with ice cream? I mean, I know I'm being silly, and I almost feel like I'm being kind of like a toddler, like stomping my feet. Like, why should I have to go without those things? Because God created them. They're delicious. I should be able to enjoy them like my skinny friends.
Well, actually, God didn't create cinnamon rolls, and He didn't create Dairy Queen. He created cows to produce milk. That's an ingredient in them, and I would guess He created wheat. He didn't create Coke, right, or Dr. Pepper. So, and also, I guess I would even ask: would God create high-calorie soda that had no nutrients in it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, probably not.
He might not, because He knows it'd be so tempting and no nutritional value. I'm not saying you can't have those things, but
that's my bargaining. It's an internal dialogue I have with myself when I try to bargain to get what I want. And I know that's wrong. I know that's my carnal nature trying to say, I want what I want when I want it. And I know in your I Deserve a Donut app, that point is just hounded home. I know that.
Right. But I mean, wrong or not, we all have that going on, right? We have the internal dialogue. We have our flesh wanting it. There's spiritual warfare sometimes. So, it is what it is. The question is, are we going to combat it? And you've already made moves to that. So as far as your question about, do you do diet or non-diet boundaries? I think you can do either one. You do whatever you want. And I do talk about in that Say Goodbye to Emotional Eating. Have you read that chapter on boundaries?
Yes.
Okay, so that talks a lot about it. But, you can also think about doing something that's a little modified. So let's say, sugar's hard for you, but that doesn't mean you have to do keto all your life. You could do 3 meals and one snack a day and no processed sugar, no sweets. So you
Right.
can still have potatoes, you wouldn't have to follow the keto diet rigidly, but you could still limit your sweets maybe to what won't ever tempt you.
I tend to bargain with myself. Like I'll go to the grocery store and I'll buy a box of donuts and I will tell myself in the grocery store they're for my grandkids. But by the time I get home, I've eaten half the box. So I hear what you're saying. And I guess I want to be encouraged to think that if I stay on keto until I've reached my goal weight, which I'm about 30 pounds away from my goal weight, I've lost probably and kept off about 40. So I'm within reach of my goal weight. I don't want to bargain with myself just so that I can have bread and pasta and potatoes, but I also don't want to be so limited my whole life. Like every time we go out, I always at the breakfast hold the potatoes and toast. When we go out to dinner, hold the potato. I don't want rice. I don't want pasta. And so I would like to know that at some point I will have infused my body with enough truth and gotten out the lies that I could sit down to a meal and eat a normal amount of calories and not gain weight and not damage all the good that I've done, all the hard work at resisting temptation and truth journaling and renewing my mind when I, just wanted to go eat a bowl of cereal. And so I guess I'm looking to you for that picture of what you just said, that I could modify my boundaries and still stay within the whole project of spending my day with Jesus instead of spending my day trying to medicate myself with food.
Yeah. And I think, you don't really know for sure. I guess, and some people say they feel like they should just never go back on sugar. And of course,
right.
My story is I did go back on sugar, but every once in a while I will go off sugar. In fact, the funny thing is today I made a commitment with my friend. We're going off sweets for 2 months, except that I said I do get to have one piece of cheesecake at a local restaurant that I was planning to have. So during those 2 months, I'm going to have that one piece of cheesecake. And I said the rare hot chocolate. But the reason I did it is I feel like I'm being kind of developing addictive tendencies to sugar. And I also live within a 5-minute walk of a great grocery store. So I'm really close to things where I can go get them during the day. We're working on selling our house in Montana. So we have some stresses going on right now. So I just thought for my own peace of mind, I need to go off sugar for a while. And I'm not renewing my mind regularly about food. In fact, I haven't been renewing my mind enough about life either. I was just thinking to myself, I need to start going back to truth journaling once a day. And I haven't been. So I guess the question is, can you get to that point? Well, you were at it, when you made your husband the peanut butter pie or peanut butter cake, right? But you've been renewing 3 times a day. Yeah. You've been working really hard. So I think it just depends on how long you keep renewing. And then will you go back to renewing down the road? So maybe you'll experience freedom like I did when I'd written Freedom from Emotional Eating. And I was, it didn't even tempt me. I was at a stage of life where I never even was tempted to break my boundaries. But then I moved on and started renewing about different things. I wasn't renewing about food anymore. And I think God wanted me to renew about different things because there are other things that were more important than food. But the bottom line is I've kept my weight off all these years. So I haven't yo-yo dieted. No more yo-yoing ever since I wrote Freedom from Emotional Eating. No more gaining my weight back. But do I still have the tendency to sometimes to break boundaries, eat too many sweets? Sometimes I do. And for my health, especially at my age with cholesterol, if I do, I need to cut out sweets again.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
Yeah, and other people, though, they just say, no, sweets are terrible for you. And there's Christian people on social media. I've had a couple of them on my podcast, and they just don't eat sugar. So it's, different people have different things. And I guess here's another question I'd ask. Of all those things you've had to give up for keto, are there some of those things you had to give up that will not send you into binging or eating too much more? Like spaghetti noodles.
Yes. The things that I don't keep in my house, like potato chips and cookies and candy. And I don't tend to bake a lot of cakes because cake is one of my weaknesses. So I tend not to have that stuff in my house, but I don't overeat when it comes to things like pasta or like a baked potato or even a sandwich with bread. So I could see the potential down the road that I could modify my plan and try to do the 3 meals a day with one snack, because what you're telling me is the best news of all, is that you have kept your weight off, and I've dieted my whole adult life and never really felt like I was at a healthy weight that I could maintain. So you're telling me you have maintained your weight, you have let sweets back in, and then sometimes you'll curb yourself. I like that picture. I like that picture of hope. And I feel great today. I mean, my knees don't hurt as much, my ankles don't hurt as much. I ride horses, and I've even the last couple of times I've ridden, I have felt so much lighter physically riding, that I don't ever want this feeling to stop. This motivation, this I don't know what the word I'm looking for, this track I'm on, I don't want it to stop. And so getting to my goal weight isn't really my end goal. My end goal is getting to that relationship with Jesus where he's with me from morning till night. And food is something I do just to stay alive. It's not something I do to live or to find joy and to validate who I am. It's like I've gone to food my whole life. And today I just woke up and I saw that cake on the counter, and I just was so thankful that last night I didn't even lick my fingers when I made the frosting. So I'm really encouraged that, you had sweets and now you've decided you're going to give it up for 2 months, but that's okay. That doesn't mean that there's any kind of failure involved or boundary slippage, or it's a huge help what you just said.
Oh, good. Well, first of all, let me say, because otherwise this will distract me. What's the date today? It's like February 8th or
the 7th?
7th. Okay. So yeah, so
7th.
we record this February 7th. So if I put this podcast out in June and you see me eating an ice cream cone someplace, you say, Barb said she was offered too much. By June, I will probably be back on again. So there's that. But what I was going to say is, how long were you renewing your mind? Like 3 times a day were you doing the truth journaling, or not the truth journaling, all the renewing exercises? For how long you've been doing that?
I started that the very end of November, kind of right before Christmas. And I was focusing more on the paperwork and the writing and the journaling. I wasn't really paying attention to food. I was sticking to my boundaries, but it's within the last 2 weeks that I've found a clear path. I have my stuff set on my dining room table. It's the first thing I do when I get up. I renew my mind and I read scriptures, or I'll read the Renewing of the Mind Project, some of the scriptures in there, or I will just truth journal. Like if I had a stressful day the day before, something happened that could have triggered me, I will just blurt it all out on the paper and I'll combat each sentence with the truth. So for the last 2 weeks, I have been laser focused on renewing my mind, truth journaling, and I've felt more committed to this than I have in anything I've ever tried, any diet, certainly any diet I've ever tried, because this isn't really a diet.
Right. Okay. So 2 weeks of really consistent renewing several times a day.
Yes.
So that is what does the trick. So anybody who's not renewing and not renewing at that level, you probably wouldn't expect to follow your boundaries. But it's interesting that you had success so quickly when you really started. And truth journal, you have to find the right way to truth journal. Because you told me the wrong way you did at the beginning. I was just talking to another lady who was doing it in a way that wasn't helpful. I mean, one of the things you said, when you're talking about, one was just, like a statement of fact. So my Rally Bible study talks about truth journaling. Are you putting down beliefs or facts? So saying
right.
It's delicious, that's just a fact. It's not a belief. We have to change our beliefs. So anyway, the thing is, if you start struggling again, you just remember, okay, what did I do to get to the point where it was easy for me to say no to the chocolate, the peanut butter cake?
Right.
I was doing that level of renewing. And we might not be able to keep that level of renewing going all our lives. But when we find ourselves struggling, usually what we find is we haven't been doing maybe hardly any renewing. Like me,
yes.
I've hardly been renewing now with all the kind of stresses from the sale of our home, just emotional and like the economy. Is this a good time? And oh no, we're leaving Montana, possibly. So all of that. And I've been having my morning quiet time, and I've been talking to God through the Bible study, thinking about it. But then during the day, I have not been going back to renewing. So maybe that's why I
Gotcha.
had to give up sweets because if I'm not going to God, I'm like, oh, I want some sweets. So is that encouraging to hear that? I guess that's the question.
Definitely. I really never really delved into the lies I believed, even as a child. Like you have a section in your Freedom from Emotional Eating, the one that has the 100 steps in it. There's one section in there that lies that you believed from your childhood, and I never really let myself even think about the lies I believed from my childhood about food. And so digging deep into that and being really truthful really brought some stuff up I kind of was shocked at. I was able to process the lies and throw the lies out and infuse it with truth, and it was very healing.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, it's really helpful to look at what we learned growing up about food and also about life.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times what we learn growing up about life is affecting, our whatever trial we're going through. Like say if I learn I have to make the best decision possible, or I have to have the best life possible, or it has to be the most fun possible. All those things are things you can learn growing up, or it has to be easy, that when a trial comes, that makes us all traumatized, right? It makes us more emotional than we need to be. If we instead think about what Jesus said, life is going to be hard, well, then we're not surprised when life is hard or boring or not fun or not easy, right?
Exactly. I have gone back and listened to your Christian Habits podcast. I went all the way back to the very first one, and I've just listened to them all in a row. And some of the guest speakers that you've had, I've gone on and bought their books, and I've found some huge, huge life-changing tips and suggestions, just practical things like the gentleman you had on who talked about time management and putting your phone on do not disturb and not letting your phone disrupt you. Like when I am sitting down renewing my mind, I don't have my phone there unless I'm using my I do not deserve a donut app, because the phone can be a huge distraction. And what I didn't realize was that when I look at my phone and look away from the Bible, I'm actually switching a gear in my head, going from being with Jesus to being with social media. And it takes a minute to switch that gear back to the Bible. So I have found that podcast to be so helpful on a practical level. And a lot of it has nothing to do with food, but a lot of it has to do with just the desires of our hearts. So,
oh, do you remember which episode that was that you talked about
your assistant was interviewing you. Julie was interviewing you on renewing your mind.
Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting. Huh. I'll find out what that one is and put it in the show notes. What was she interviewing me about?
She was interviewing you on renewing your mind and how to do it. Yeah.
Oh, good. Jordan Rayner, I just had an interview with him, and he wrote a book on productivity. And I found his book to be pretty life-changing. He's a Christian. I can't remember what his book is called, but I just did one with him just a couple months ago, I think.
I think I might have already listened to it.
Yeah, well, I love how God takes us on a journey. He starts us with it. He makes progress. We backslide a little bit. We make more progress. We feel like failures. We feel like we'll never change. We keep renewing. And then, you look back and you see all the changes.
Well, and we just had a sermon in church on how God will take us on a journey, and we are in such an age and an era of wanting things instantly. We want our food instantly. We want to fact check instantly by Googling something. We want things right now, and that the Lord doesn't do things right now. He does things over a long period of time. So when I think of the fact that I have been literally dieting my whole adult life, and I just turned 60, my life isn't over. I mean, God still has a lot to do with me, but at 60 years of age, I'm finally getting a hold of this whole food thing. That doesn't mean that the whole, 60 years was wasted because I was overweight or because I struggled with food. That was my journey. And I'm just learning that it was all beautiful and it all meant something. And at this stage of my life, I'm excited about actually being able to help people and pass on your resources to other women who I know are going through the same thing I'm going through. And your process of making it a project and renewing your mind seems so simple, but it is anything but simple because of the effect that it's had on my life. I know if my mom were to call you, she'd thank you because she just turned 80 And she said, I'm so glad you found this gal. She just seems like she's, the Lord has used her to get to the heart of your problems. So my mom thanks you, Barb.
That's nice. What did you do to get started? Because I listened to you. You had 2 weeks had pretty big success as far as your emotions changing, being able to follow the plan. A lot of people are listening and they're like, oh, either I'm doing it the same way you were doing it back at the beginning that wasn't effective, or I can't even make myself do it at all. So did you have a hard time making yourself do it?
In a way, I did, because I'm a super busy person. We're self-employed, and I have grandkids, and I belong to a ladies group and a church, and I'm fairly busy, like we all are. So to carve out that time 3 times a day, I've heard some of your other podcast interviews where women have given advice that, especially women with little kids, that it just has to be a priority, even if other things have to be let go. Like, I spent one whole week fasting from television at a certain time of the day, like telling myself I can't even entertain the thought of turning on the television or picking up a book before I have done my truth journaling or my quiet time. So I have found it easy because I leave my stuff out where I walk by it every day. I walk by your book. I walk by my Bible. I walk by my pen. I walk by my truth journal. I walk by it several times a day. And so it's like, oh, have I done that yet? No, I better sit down and do that. So for me, it's been accessibility, keeping it out where I can see it every day, all day.
And then do you actually have a commitment to do it 3 times a day?
I do. I do it when I get up. I do it at lunchtime, and then I do it before I go to bed. And it doesn't take long. You've said before, 5-10 minutes, but I don't make it about anything other than what I'm going through right then. So like when I flip through your book, those 100 ways to renew your mind, there is something for every single thing I'm going through right then, like good food eating or bad scale eating or stress at the end of the day, stress at the beginning of the day. It's almost like it's so convenient and so easy for me to find something. Even if I have already done one of the 100 things, I repeat what I've done and I just keep filling myself with truth. And it's working and I'm so excited about it.
Oh, good. Well, it's not that you didn't learn it right the first time. It's just that we keep believing the same lies. We keep having the same problems. So
yes,
we keep needing God to pour in truth each time.
Right.
You just write it down in the book?
I do. I write right in the book. Yeah.
Okay. That's what I often do that too. In fact, I'm doing the procrastination Bible study again. I just did that again and I just wrote it down in the book.
I really need to do that one.
Yeah, that's so funny. Because you told me before we started that you had that book 2 years ago. Tammy told us that she had it 2 years ago, still hasn't done it. So she's not perfect. She's not a perfect renewer. That's good. But see, I think making a commitment is important because right now I have no commitment. So I haven't said to myself, Barb, you need to renew once a day. Because I usually renew, quite often even without making it a commitment. But yeah, that's something I'm realizing.
Right.
I need to go back to, and renew at least once a day, if not twice. And, in the evening, you can renew about whatever happened during the day to upset you or worry you or make you annoyed or all that.
Right.
Renew about regular life and not just about the food, right? That sounds like what you've been doing.
I have found truth journaling to be particularly helpful with my relationship with my husband because I remember you were doing a study with another couple on marriage and you're finding yourself annoyed with your husband and critical. I think you called it a critical spirit. So I've started truth journaling with my husband or about my husband along with the food. And I've seen a pretty decent change in my attitude towards my husband, which of course has mean his attitude has changed as well. So it's been a really good thing. He doesn't even know that I'm doing it. So I'm kind of like in stealth mode. He doesn't see me truth journal. And if he were to read what I said about him, the lies that I said about him, then, I'd go back and write the truth. I don't know whether he'd be mad at me or he'd love me more. Who knows? But I found it very, very helpful to combat how I feel about him because I love him. I don't hate him. He's not super annoying. He's not a pain. He's my husband. We've been married for almost 35 years. So there's always something to learn. Me at being married for 35 years, finally figuring out how to be a better wife. So there you go.
Yeah, that's good. Well, my guess is if he read all the truths, he would be okay. If he
Yes, he
read
would
the
be.
lines, he might be a little worried.
Yes.
If he read the truth, he'd be comforted. Yeah, that's good. What advice do you have for somebody, who is, back at the beginning? Because really, I mean, in a way, this was supposed to be a coaching interview about the sugar and all
Right.
that. And then, but it's really, I think in some ways more of a victory interview because, you've had so much success. And really, I wouldn't say the success is just weight success. Even though you've lost some weight, it's more like developing the habit and having God change his life and growing closer to him through it. Is that what you would say?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, making a commitment to do it 3 times a day. Sometimes I'll do it 4 times a day. And sometimes I'll get to the end of the day and realize, oh, I've only done it twice. Do I need that third one? And I'm like, no, I'm good. I'll just do it first thing in the morning. So I'm not super rigid about it. I don't want to set myself up to fail, but I don't think you can ever renew or truth journal too much because it's all about God. It's all about your relationship with God. So any advice I would give to somebody would be, don't beat yourself up on the days that you maybe only did it once and maybe you broke your boundaries, because you've said it before that you really can't focus on the failure. And I've found that when I get to the end of my day and I have not broken my boundaries and I've renewed my mind, I've got so much peace. And then I wake up in the morning and I think, oh, that's right, I have followed my boundaries for like 12 days straight. I feel so good. Today's another day to follow my boundaries and to truth journal and to get my books out and to renew my mind. And last night, because I knew I was doing this podcast interview, I had a dream that I ate 3 bagels. And those are not within my boundaries to eat a bagel. So I woke up this morning feeling I had this little cloud over my head, like, oh no, I broke my boundaries. I'm like, wait a minute. That was just a dream. You didn't eat any bagels.
Okay, what are you going to do? Let's say it's 1 month down the road. Because in the beginning of something new, this life changes. Like, oh, you're all excitement, all aglow. 2 weeks in, okay, picture yourself 2 months down the road. What kind of hurdles might you have that might, take you off track?
Okay, well, in your I Deserve a Donut app, clearly it states, what will your life look like 2 to 3 months from now if I don't follow my boundaries? What my life will look like is joint pain, weight gain, clothes that don't fit, maybe borderline depression, maybe borderline withdrawal. 2 to 3 months from now, what my life will look like if I do follow my boundaries is more victory. I will weigh lighter. I will have more energy. My joints won't hurt as much with my arthritis. So there's no question in my mind that 2 to 3 months from now, I will still be doing the same thing. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is what it's going to take for me. And it's not, like as I said before, it's not really about the food. It's about my relationship with God. And having been a Christian since I was 6 years old, I didn't really realize that God was there for me when I wanted him. I didn't really invite him into my day-to-day. I didn't invite him into what I was going to eat during the day or how I was going to spend my day. I'm like, okay, this is the day the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it, all on my own until I need you. And now I invite God into my day-to-day life every day, all day long. And that's really what's changed about your books for me, is that you pushed me out of my comfort zone, and I'm finding myself relying on God for the stressful moments in my life more than just thinking I'm going to go grab a donut or a cookie and I'm going to go shut myself up in the guest room and turn the TV on. And that's really what I was doing. So I know you can call me in 2 to 3 months, or you can send me an email and I can just tell you how great I will be doing.
Yeah, well, I think you still will be, because it sounds like you love renewing.
I do.
You've already are working on the habit. I mean, if you love something, you're going to keep doing it. So
Yes.
Yeah, hopefully whoever's listening is struggling, get to the point where you love it. And you didn't love it before when you're trying it. So I think you do have to be honest, and you have to kind of learn the techniques to do it in a way that it works.
Yes.
Because what's going to make you love it is the peace and joy.
Right. And it's not going to come natural to everybody. I do like to write and I do like to journal, but this did not come naturally to me. And I felt like I wasn't doing it right. So I thought, well, why should I do it if I'm not doing it right? And then I picked it back up again, and I really, really sought the Lord. And then it just kind of all fell into place. The pieces just all fit when I started breaking down my sentences in truth journaling. breaking each sentence down and combating it with the truth, I look back, okay, my lies maybe took up 2 or 3 lines, but my truths took up 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 lines. And it just poured out of me. And I'm like, whoa, where did that come from? This is stinking cool. So
yeah. Yeah, I feel like I have the same experience. I feel like some days, some days it's just truth, but some days God pours truth out. And those are it's so fun when he does that. So yeah, you're definitely encouraging me to go back, make that commitment, because, if you're used to doing something just when you feel like doing it, you always feel like it. And then you stop feeling like it, then you have to go back to, I'm going to make a commitment.
Yes.
And I'm going to do this, so many times a day. So yeah, so that's good. Okay.
Awesome.
Well, great. I don't know, did you decide to do anything about the keto?
After talking to you, I'm going to stay on keto until I reach my goal weight, which is, I want to say, probably somewhere around 32 pounds. Once I reach my goal weight, I'm going to modify my boundaries just a little bit. I'm going to start slow by maybe allowing, a few more carbs, like maybe pasta or bread or potatoes, and stay away from sweets for a while. And I would like eventually to be able to go out to dinner with my husband and split a dessert. And I am going to modify when I reach my goal weight. I'm going to modify my boundaries and not really call it keto, just call it low carb eating.
Right. That's good. I do remember interviewing somebody, and what she did is if she had a sweet, she planned for it. So she actually put it on the calendar, and she truth journaled before she ate it. And she might have done it afterwards too.
Oh, wow.
So it was more of a planned event. And I do find for myself that if I have sweets more than once or twice a week, that I start craving them.
Okay.
That's about all I can have before I start craving them, is once or twice a week.
Okay.
So anyway, there's a couple possibilities, but then I also know other people say it's not worth the risk. And also it's not worth the craving.
Yeah.
So that's just being different for everybody. Okay, well, thank you for coming on and sitting in the car 6 miles from your home. And I know our sound quality wasn't the best on this, but we do what we can do.
I really appreciate you taking the time. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I'm very much encouraged, and I was encouraged before I even got on. So there you go.
Hey everyone, I'm going to break in here. That was the end of Tammy's interview. We interviewed a week ago, but I want to share 2 more things. And the first is a challenge, and the second is just a word to those of you who are doing keto or carb boundaries. So first, the challenge. I was so encouraged by my interview with Tammy that I started to renew my mind 3 times a day again. So after we did that interview almost a week ago, I said, I'm going to renew my mind 3 times a day, morning, lunch, and at the end of the workday. And it's just about regular life stuff, anything that comes up. And I was once again reminded of how much I love truth journaling and how much it helps me get through the day joyfully, with contentment, and also doing my work. Because here's the thing, when regular life stuff comes up, it produces negative emotions. And those negative emotions, they make us do things we don't want to do. So they make us break our boundaries and eat, or get on our phone too often, or they keep us from doing things we want to do, like following our work plan for the day or doing our to-do list. So I want to encourage you guys, challenge you maybe, to try, even just for 1 week, making a commitment to renew your mind 3 times a day about regular life. Now, most people, they'll start in their quiet time in the morning. I found for me that's more effective to have my first one about 1 hour into work, but just set it up however you want if you want to take this challenge. Okay, the second thing I want to talk to you guys about, and this is only for people who do, keto or low carb or something like that, is that just be careful if you modify your boundaries, because Tammy was talking about modifying her boundaries at the end and starting to add in other foods. Okay, if your boundary system says you can't have certain foods, you're altering that boundary system if you add foods in. Or if you're on carbs and you say something like, oh, I'm just going to have a few more carbs, you're altering it. So however you alter it, you just have to make sure you have primary boundaries. Because if you don't have primary boundaries, then you'll gain that weight back. I don't know if I'm explaining it very well, but let's just say Tammy adds in potatoes and breads. Okay, she's going to have to be careful that when she adds in those potatoes and breads, they don't make her start gaining weight. So she might say, okay, I'm going to still kind of try and eat this way, but I'm going to switch to 3 meals a day and 1 snack for my primary boundaries. And within those 3 meals and 1 snack, I'm still going to outlaw certain types of food, but I'm going to bring other foods back in. So that's why she's actually switching her boundaries, her primary boundaries, from keto to 3 meals and 1 snack. So anyway, I hope that makes sense, because I have seen people gain their weight back by not having primary boundaries and thinking they do, when in actuality they don't, because what they did was they modified a boundary system, and this new modification isn't working to help them maintain their weight. Okay, I hope that interview was helpful. I'll try to post a little thing over on Facebook that says, what was your major takeaway from this interview? Because it's kind of fun to go over there and have discussion about what your takeaway was. So I hope you guys have a good week following God and following your boundaries, and I will talk to you next time.